Welcome to the City of Plano's virtual WaterWise landscape tour, presented by Live Green in Plano and with your guide, Albert. Today, we're showcasing Victoria Stansell's stunning landscape. Featured on the 2019 live WaterWise landscape tour, Victoria's yard was a huge hit. Visitors loved it so much that we decided to treat a wider audience, this time with a virtual tour. Gardening is Victoria's passion, and it absolutely shows. Plus, this Collin County Master Gardener has over 100 varieties of WaterWise plants to showcase. We're thrilled to welcome you to a very special virtual tour. Before we take our tour, though, let's get oriented. Located in central Plano near Cheyenne Park, the front of her home faces south. Thanks to her mature trees, most of the front yard receives shade, aside from the parkway strip and a sunny patch leading to the east side yard, which receives primarily sun and is a pollinator's paradise. Most of the backyard receives sun, and Victoria has the perfect pool and pergola retreat. Finally, the west side yard, an extension of the front yard, receives primarily shade. Let's meet the homeowner, shall we?
Hi, I'm Victoria Stansell and I live here in Plano, and welcome to my garden. I have been living in Plano for about 7 years now, and when I moved here my home had mainly just shrubs and bushes and mostly greenery. So I, being a flower gardener, I wanted to see some color come in. So I've taken time each year over the past 7 seasons to add various plants, and I would say I'm primarily a pollinator garden gal, so to speak. I like to see all of nature come into the garden. So I like to see butterflies, dragonflies, and little geckos and ladybugs and such to come in. So by doing that, when I garden, I definitely do not use any kind of pesticides. So I am glad you're here to see my garden.
Speaking of butterflies, we filmed our virtual tour at the beginning of October, the monarch migration in full swing. But this is a haven for many species of winged wonders.
I've been asked about what type of butterflies end up in my yard, and I've got a couple of favorites, but there's several things that I've seen in the yard. Early spring, from even on through now, you start seeing the eastern black swallowtail, and since I have Dutchman's pipevine growing in my yard, I also get the pipevine swallowtails will come. And their little chrysalises will attach to parts of the eaves of my house, and they are just wonderful when they emerge. And of course, this time of year, the monarchs come out, and I love and can't wait for the monarch migration each year. And but throughout the summer, I will see those little yellow, I think they're called the clouded sulfurs, I believe. We have buckeyes that I've seen out here. I've seen the admiral and the queens.
Victoria cited other species, including a variety of swallowtails and the painted lady as well. She's created an ideal habitat for pollinators. So how did she get here, and who inspired her?
Well, one of the things that kind of inspired me to plant this kind of garden is a few years after I moved here, I heard about a Landscape for Life course that I took through the city of Plano. And the instructor's name was Erin, and she introduced me to the Master Gardener Association. Well, that sounded like something I was very interested in doing, so a year later, I did that, and I was exposed to all these beautiful plants and flowers I'd never seen before, including the ones up at Myers Park that's here in Collin County. And I would go around and go, I want that one, I want that one, I want to grow this in my yard, and it just evolved like that.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Over the years, Victoria has added plenty of plants to her collection, making her yard the place to see native and adapted varieties in action. She cites her master gardener training as the key to her DIY success.
Oftentimes people ask me if I use a professional landscaper or some kind of company coming in to help put all these gardens in, because I basically divide my yard up into garden rooms, so to speak. I may have a shade area garden, and then the brighter gardens with the plants that were planted by seed versus in already in pots and things when I plant them. But no, the answer is no, I haven't, because I became a master gardener. And I will tell you, once you become a master gardener, unless you've got several acres of land and just can't handle it yourself, you pretty much learn how to build your own landscape.
Let's take a closer look at what Victoria built, starting with the front yard. From the curb, you notice that the parkway strip is uniquely designed. No turf means no need to irrigate this tough spot that, in other yards, often leaves pedestrians soaked. This dry creek bed and a fabulous driftwood find complete the latest addition to the area. A lovely native perennial that adds movement and color to the parkway strip is this whirling butterfly's gaura, its flowers dancing in the wind in full sun to partial shade. And you can't miss the mailbox garden. Those fireworks, gomphrenias, and zinnias surely make every trip to the mailbox a joy. Aside from the parkway strip, the bulk of the front yard lies under a mature shade tree and features a number of shade-tolerant ground covers, ferns, and shrubs. The beds are generously mulched, protecting plants from those upcoming cold snaps. One subtle pop of color that we spotted was the autumn joy sedum, its pretty pink blooms enjoying the dappled light. Take a brief walk into the west side yard, where you'll find more shade until late afternoon. Mostly completed this year, the area features soft whites and deep purples, looking quite elegant together. Case in point, the combination of white hyacinth bean and Santa Barbara Mexican bush sage. You can find varieties of one plant that represent both colors. That's American Beautyberry. This hardy Texas native is an excellent shrub for shade, and birds adore it. Victoria has the Pearl Glam and white varieties. Milagro loves to lay on that lush St. Augustine. Turf is water intensive, but Victoria proudly revealed that her turf required no supplemental summer watering. She wanted viewers to know that it's all in the magic of well-prepared soil.
How to amend the ground, how to amend the dirt, and what we call this black gumbo that's here in Texas. And that's probably your number one thing to learn to do. And if you are not able to do it, yes, I would suggest you get somebody to do that for you, because it's vitally important in order to have a sustainable garden that doesn't need a lot of artificial type amendments and things that aren't good for nature.
To prepare your soil, we first recommend testing it. Know which nutrients are lacking before you buy and apply fertilizer or overwater. Then you can amend appropriately.
I usually put in compost, peat moss, maybe even some worm castings, and if you want to do planting mix right around the area that you're going to actually put the plant as well. But I mix all those up like a soup, and I will rake it in and shovel it in and rake it in and get it good. And you can plant right away, or what I like to do is, when I was starting a part of my yard 1 year at a time, I didn't tackle it all in 1 year, I would do it in the fall, do all the amendments, get all those amendments I just mentioned put in the fall. Then I would cover it with mulch, which is vitally important as well, and I would actually let it sit till spring. That way, over the winter, all those good parts, all those things. The worms will start coming in, and the other types of creatures will be in there and mixing in. You know, worms are a friend. They are actually the aerators of our soil, and they love all those amendments that are in there. So that's what I do before I even start doing the so-called fun work of going shopping for the pretty plants and flowers.
With healthy soil, it's no wonder that WaterWise plants and nature friends are thriving here. Before we enter the east side yard, we pass through a sunny patch of the front yard, a designated monarch butterfly way station. And they're there in force, loving those fireworks gomphrenias. Victoria loves the color purple, so we wanted to highlight a few favorites in this sunny spot. Check out this breathtaking shot from our 2019 live event, featuring purple hyacinth bean cascading over the fence, Mexican bush sage below it, and fall aster bursting from the ground. It sure is hard to leave this spot, but the promise of even more color lies just beyond the gate. Aside from the color, one of the first things you notice when you enter the east side yard are the satisfying lines of the beds. Victoria used a manual edger to lay out the flow. And one of the first plants to pop here is Greg's Blue Mistflower, another butterfly favorite, especially for queen butterflies. Those unique lavender blooms are soft and lovely, but this plant spreads aggressively. There are so many WaterWise plants in these beds, so what are some of Victoria's favorites?
Oftentimes people ask me, well, Victoria, what are your favorite plants? And I have so many, it's hard to really, pinpoint down my absolute favorites, but there are ones that I would say, if you were a beginner gardener, ones that you get the most bang for your buck. That is, they're easy to grow, they're not temperamental, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. And those would be my various salvias. Those are extremely easy here, and they are in a shrub or bush size. Your others may be your autumn sages. Those are quite easy to grow. And we also have coneflowers. Those are quite easy. And I think those are those are going to be, the coneflowers are mainly in spring and summer, but our salvias, they start growing and they last for months until the frost comes. And so those are all very easy ones to grow. Now, because I love pollinators, my personal favorites also include all the milkweeds, because I want my butterfly friends coming around and laying their eggs on those plants, which is unique to butterflies. I also like to make sure I have hummingbird favorites in there, like my Turk's caps. Hummingbirds love the Turk's caps, and they love the acanthus plant. And they are gravitated towards those, and they do like those large salvias as well. Now, people often ask me, well, are all these perennials or all these annuals? Well, 99% of them are perennials, because I like, being able to have a good investment that flowers are going to come back year after year. But I will admit, I do have a few of my favorite annuals, ones that I know that you plant, they will last and be beautiful all season long, but then they die and you have to replant the next year. They don't reseed themselves. So my favorites for those would be my Mexican flame vine that I let grow up my fence in the backyard. Butterflies love those as well, and the dragonflies and bees. We can't forget about our good worker bees out in the yard. I also like the zinnias that I plant with seeds, and those are very economic to grow, because a plant or a packet of seeds is like $3.50, $4, something like that. Some of them are less than $4 per packet of seeds. So those are very easy, and they grow up to 5-6 feet tall. They're just gorgeous. I also like, for the monarchs, love both pentas that I've had in various years. I don't have them this year, but I did have them last year and the year before. And the gomphrenias, the fireworks version of the gomphrenias, which are those really cute little pink puffballs, and the monarchs and swallowtail butterflies. Absolutely love them. And I think I could go on and on and on, but there's just so many. I can't imagine how many different plants I've got in my yard. So.
But watering all of these plants doesn't have to break the bank.
So I try to be a responsible citizen here in the city of Plano when it comes to watering, because I know we hear a lot about the water shortages. So I'm going to go back a second and say one of the things that helps with the watering is the fact that I have the soil prepared and the plants in there that are drought tolerant plants, and the soil works with us instead of against us when it comes to watering. Now, the third thing that I do is I use drip irrigation. So we went, and over the seasons, the various years since I've been here, each season we try to add another area of the yard with drip line. And that is something that is very helpful because you can use a timer on it. You know how long it needs to run. You're not overwatering, you're not underwatering. And one of the nicest things about it is you can tweak areas because they have the little knobs on them where the water comes out, the emitters, I think is what they're called. And if one plant needs a little more than another, take for instance a hydrangea. Let's face it, folks, hydrangeas are beautiful, but they're the water drinkers of the garden. So you may need your emitter up high where it has a lot of water coming out in that one plant, but then you may have a very drought tolerant cactus in another area of the garden, or another very drought tolerant vine or bush, or flowers that do not do well with wet feet, they call it, meaning the roots are getting too wet. Then you can have it barely coming out through that emitter. So there is, I can't say enough about the advantages of drip line, and you will find out that it's still cost effective as well, because if you are using your drip line, even though you have an initial investment, you are not wasting water and paying those high water bills at the end.
Past the east side yard, we find the perfect pool and pergola retreat, a great space for zen time, as Victoria says. A number of potted olive and citrus trees line the edge of the pool, along with stylish arrangements of potted succulents. It was in this area that Victoria once watched with joy as a family of ducklings grew. When they matured, she led them down her alley into the creek a block away, a very fond memory. Back under the pergola, we find the perfect spot for hosting family, something that's so important to Victoria. In fact, she has a very special tradition.
Whenever a special event in my family occurs, I plant a tree. So last year, my parents in another state turned 90 years old. So I planted 2 tulip trees, or little dwarf magnolias, in honor of my 2 parents' 90th birthdays. I have a Rose of Sharon tree that I planted when my first grandchild was born. And when my second grandchild was born, I planted a forest pansy redbud.
It's clear that Victoria and her yard are full of love. We'd like to sincerely thank Victoria for sharing her yard, and you, our viewers, for following along. We've referenced many plants and resources throughout our tour, and we invite you to learn more. Visit plano.gov/landscape tour for a corresponding plant list specifically for the Stansell yard. Visit plano.gov/seed programs and click Learn Online to watch our recorded webinars. From your friends at Live Green in Plano, thank you for viewing the virtual WaterWise landscape tour.